The stroke hit me like a freight train at 42, right in the middle of presenting blueprints to the Riverside Development Committee. One moment I was Ethan Carter, respected architect with a corner office and a BMW. The next I was fumbling for words like a drunk tourist asking for directions. The doctor said I was lucky. Minimal damage, full recovery expected. My wife Julia said I was dramatic. "You're fine, Ethan," she insisted, barely looking up from her laptop as I struggled to button my shirt 3 weeks later. "Stop milking this for sympathy." That's when I knew our 15-year marriage had become as stable as a house built on quicksand. The cottage in Millfield, Maine came up for sale at the perfect time. Julia called it rustic charm. I called it a fixer-upper that would keep my hands busy while my brain rewired itself. The realtor, a chatty woman named Beth, warned us about the isolation. "Nearest neighbor's a quarter mile down the road," she said, keys jangling. "Hope you folks like quiet." Julia wrinkled her nose at the peeling paint and warped floorboards. "How long until you can make this livable?" 6 months, maybe 8, I replied, running my hand along the window frame. The bones of the house were solid, just like mine. Everything else needed work. We moved in on a gray October morning. Julia immediately claimed the spare bedroom as her office, setting up her laptop and gallery catalogs with military precision. She managed the Coastal Contemporary Gallery back in Portland, a 40-minute drive she complained about daily. "I can't believe you're making me commute," she said, arranging her art books. "This whole hermit thing is selfish, Ethan." I started painting 2 weeks later. Not walls, canvas. The art supplies appeared in my hands at the local craft store like they'd been waiting for me. Brushes, oils, a wooden easel that reminded me of my grandfather's workshop. Julia found me in the sunroom that first evening, palette knife in hand, working on something that might have been a seascape. "Really?" She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're having a midlife crisis now?" "It's therapy," I said, not looking away from the canvas. Dr. Morrison suggested creative outlets. Dr. Morrison suggested light exercise and reading, not this quote. She gestured at my setup like I'd installed a meth lab. "My wife preferred me painting the porch, not my soul," I muttered. "What was that?" "Nothing, honey." The Millfield art scene, I discovered, was surprisingly active for a town of 3,000. Julia threw herself into it with the enthusiasm of a missionary spreading the gospel. Gallery openings, wine tastings, studio visits. Suddenly our calendar was packed with events I had no interest in attending. "You need to socialize," Julia insisted, adjusting her earrings in the hallway mirror before another gallery function. "People are starting to talk." "About what?" "About how you've become a recluse. Veronica thinks you're depressed." Veronica Walsh was Julia's new best friend, a gossipy real estate agent who treated other people's business like her personal entertainment system. She had opinions about everything, and the subtlety of a foghorn. "Maybe I just don't enjoy pretentious conversations about the intersection of light and shadow," I said. Julia's reflection glared at me. "These people are important, Ethan. For my career. Her career. Always her career." The first time I met Trent Morgan was at the Autumn Arts Festival in downtown Millfield. Julia had dragged me to see his latest exhibition, Coastal Abstracts, or some equally meaningless title. Trent stood in the center of the gallery like a peacock, gesturing dramatically at his paintings, while admirers nodded and sipped wine. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, confident, wearing paint-stained jeans like a badge of honor. His hair was perfectly tousled, his smile practiced and charming. He drove a restored 1967 Mustang convertible that he parked prominently in front of wherever he went. "Ethan, you have to meet Trent," Julia gushed, pulling me across the gallery. "He's incredible." Trent's handshake was firm, his eye contact intense. "The architect," he said. "Julia's told me all about you. Heard you're trying your hand at painting." "Trying being the operative word," I replied. "We should set up a studio visit sometime. I'd love to see your work." His smile was perfect. Predatory. Always happy to help a beginner. Julia beamed like he'd offered to cure cancer. That night, lying in bed while Julia scrolled through her phone beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when my wife had stopped looking at me the way she looked at Trent's paintings. Our daughter Lily visited 3 weeks later. At 16, she had Julia's sharp features and my stubborn streak. a dangerous combination. She took one look around the cottage and pronounced it actually pretty cool. "Dad's becoming an artist," Julia announced over dinner, her tone suggesting I'd taken up competitive eating. Lily examined my paintings propped against the kitchen wall. "These are good, Dad. Really good." "Thank you, sweetheart." "Mom, why do you sound like Dad started collecting roadkill?" Julia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "I'm supportive. I just think your father has more practical talents." "Like what? Making buildings look boring?" I nearly choked on my wine. "Thanks for the career summary, Lily." "I'm just saying, the art thing suits you. You seem happier." She was right. Despite Julia's constant criticism and the isolation, I felt more like myself than I had in years. The stroke had scrambled something loose in my brain, but what emerged wasn't damage, it was clarity. Later that evening, Lily cornered me in the garage, where I was organizing tools. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Are you and Mom okay?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I could have lied, given her the standard parent response about adult relationships being complicated. Instead, I sat down on my workbench and really looked at my daughter. "Why do you ask?" "She's different when you're not around." "Happier." And she talks about that artist guy a lot. Lily picked at her fingernail polish. Like, a lot. "Trent?" "Yeah. She showed me pictures of his paintings on her phone, and there were some texts." She trailed off. "What kind of texts?" "I don't know. I just saw his name pop up when she got messages, late at night." My chest tightened. "How late?" "Like midnight, 1 a.m. Her phone kept buzzing last weekend when she thought I was asleep." I kept my voice level. "What did the messages say?" "I didn't read them, Dad, but she was smiling at her phone in a way that seemed, I don't know, wrong." That night, I lay awake, listening to Julia's breathing and thinking about text messages at midnight. About the way she'd looked at Trent in the gallery, about how she'd started working late 3 nights a week, coming home smelling like wine and expensive cologne. The next morning, I started paying attention. Julia left for work at 8:30, kissing my cheek with the mechanical precision of a programmed robot. I waited 10 minutes, then walked to her closet to hang up the dress she'd discarded on the floor. That's when I found it. Hidden behind her winter coats, wrapped in tissue paper, was a painting. Not one of mine. The brushwork was too confident, the colors too bold. It was a nude study, abstract but unmistakably feminine. The model had Julia's curves, her distinctive birthmark on her left shoulder. In the bottom right corner, in flowing script, T. Morgan once stood there for 10 minutes, holding proof of my wife's betrayal, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something harder, more useful. This was rage. That evening, Julia announced she was attending a gallery opening in Portland. "It's important for networking," she said, applying lipstick in the bathroom mirror. "I might be late." "How late?" "I don't know, Ethan. These things run long." She capped the lipstick with a sharp click. "Don't wait up." She left at 6. At 10:30, I drove to Trent's studio. The lights were on. Through the large windows, I could see 2 figures silhouetted against the bright interior. They weren't looking at art. I took photos. "Please don't cause a scene at my office event," Julia pleaded the next morning, her coffee cup trembling slightly in her hands. The Coastal Contemporary Gallery was hosting its biggest opening of the year, a group show featuring emerging local talent. Trent was the headliner. "Don't worry," I said, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. "I won't," the sarcastic voice in my head added. "Not until the time is right." Julia studied my face like she was trying to decode a foreign language. "You've been strange lately." "Strange how?" "Quiet. Watching me." She set down her cup. "It's unsettling." "Maybe I'm just appreciating my wife more," I said. "After the stroke, you realize how precious time is." She bought it, or pretended to. Either way, she left for work with a quick kiss and a reminder that the opening started at 7. I spent the day in my studio, working on a new painting, while my mind churned through possibilities. The canvas showed a storm approaching a lighthouse, dark clouds swirling around a beacon of light. Art therapy, indeed. At 6:30, I put on my best suit and drove to Portland. The Coastal Contemporary Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Arts District. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the opening in full swing. Clusters of well-dressed people holding wine glasses, examining paintings with the serious expressions of people who thought they understood art. Julia stood near the entrance, radiant in a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. She was talking to Mrs. Kelleher, the gallery owner, gesturing animatedly with her hands. Even from outside, I could see she was in her element. I waited 5 minutes, then walked in. "Ethan!" Julia's smile was bright and brittle. "You made it." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, accepting a glass of wine from a passing server. "Where's the star of the show?" "Trent's over by his main piece," she said, pointing across the room. The large abstract near the back wall. Trent stood surrounded by admirers, wearing a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal paint-stained forearms. His hair was artfully disheveled, his smile confident and practiced. He was explaining his process to a woman who hung on every word. "Fascinating," I murmured. Julia shot me a warning look. "Be nice." I circulated through the gallery, listening to conversations that ranged from pretentious to absurd. Near the wine table, I overheard two women discussing Trent's work. "There's such passion in his brushstrokes," the first woman said. "He's very physical in his approach," agreed the second. "I've heard he's quite hands-on with his models." They giggled like teenagers sharing a secret. Veronica Walsh appeared at my elbow, wine glass already half empty. "Ethan! How wonderful that you're here supporting Julia." "Wouldn't be anywhere else," I said. "She's been working so hard on this show. So many late nights at the gallery, planning and organizing." Veronica's eyes glittered with something that might have been mischief. Of course, having an artist like Trent involved makes everything more intense. Intense how? Oh, you know how artists are. So passionate about their work. Trent's been here almost every evening this week, making sure his pieces are displayed just right. Very particular about lighting, positioning. She leaned closer. Julia's been such a dedicated curator, really going above and beyond. I nodded, filing away every word. Near the back of the gallery, I encountered Simon Reeves, a thin man with a carefully groomed goatee who wrote art criticism for the local paper. He was studying one of Trent's paintings with theatrical intensity. "Magnificent use of color," he announced to no one in particular. "Morgan has such an intuitive understanding of the female form." "You think so?" I asked. Simon turned, recognizing me as Julia's husband. His smile was patronizing. "Oh, yes. Trent has a special gift for capturing intimacy. His models must feel very comfortable with him." "I'm sure they do. In fact," Simon continued, warming to his subject, "I've heard he does some of his best work after hours, when the atmosphere is more relaxed." "After hours?" "Private sessions, you know, away from the distractions of the regular studio. Some artists find that midnight inspiration produces their most authentic work." He sipped his wine, watching my face carefully. Of course, that level of dedication requires models who are equally committed to the artistic process. The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. "That's very dedicated," I said. "Oh, absolutely." Trent was just telling me about a recent series he's been working on. A study of a local woman, married, I believe. Very elegant subject. He's quite taken with her artistic potential. My grip tightened on my wine glass. Sounds inspiring. Indeed. Though I imagine such intensive collaboration might be challenging for anyone not directly involved in the creative process. Simon's smile was razor thin. Art demands sacrifice, after all. I excused myself and walked toward the men's room, needing a moment to process Simon's barely veiled taunts. In the hallway, I passed a small office where I could hear voices. Julia and Trent, speaking in low, urgent tones. "Can't keep doing this," Julia was saying. "He's starting to suspect." "Let him suspect," Trent replied. "You said yourself the marriage was over. It's complicated. There's Lily to think about, and the finances. Julia, we've been through this. You can't live your life for other people's convenience. It's not that simple. Ethan's not stupid. And if he finds out before I'm ready..." "Before you're ready for what? To be happy?" There was a pause, then the sound of movement. I pressed myself against the wall, pulling out my phone. "I just need more time," Julia said. her voice softer now. To figure out the logistics. Time for what? To keep pretending you love him? I never said I loved him. Not anymore. My finger found the camera app just as they appeared in the doorway. Julia was in Trent's arms, her face tilted up toward his. They kissed with the passion of people who thought they were alone. I took 3 photos before they broke apart. Soon, Julia whispered. I promise. Trent brushed a strand of hair from her face. I'm tired of hiding, Julia. I want to be with you properly. You will be. Just let me handle Ethan. I slipped back into the main gallery, my heart pounding with adrenaline rather than heartbreak. The photos were perfect, clear, undeniable proof of their affair. But more importantly, I'd heard their plan. Julia wanted to handle me. To manage the end of our marriage on her terms. That wasn't going to happen. I found Julia 20 minutes later, back in hostess mode, chatting with potential buyers. She looked radiant, energized by her secret romance and the success of the evening. Having fun? She asked when she saw me. Absolutely, I said. Very educational. Good. I was worried you'd be bored. Not at all. I've learned quite a bit tonight. Something in my tone made her pause, but before she could respond, Trent approached with his entourage of admirers. Ethan, he said, extending his hand. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. Impressive work. Thank you. Julia tells me you're painting now, too. Just dabbling. Well, if you ever want some pointers, I'd be happy to help. Though I should warn you, his smile turned predatory. Real art requires a certain intensity. Not everyone has the stomach for it. The challenge was unmistakable. Around us, his admirers watched with the anticipation of spectators at a boxing match. I appreciate the offer, I said calmly, but I prefer to learn through observation. You'd be amazed what you can pick up just by watching. Trent's smile faltered slightly. Watching? The techniques, the methodology, how artists work with their subjects. Very illuminating. Julia stepped closer, her hand finding my arm. Ethan, for instance, I continued, I've been studying how different artists approach the same subject matter. The variations in style, the intimate details that make each interpretation unique. Trent's face had gone pale. I'm not sure I follow. Oh, I think you do. I smiled, raising my wine glass in a mock toast. To artistic inspiration. May it always be revealing. The group around us shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension they couldn't quite identify. Julia's grip on my arm tightened. Well, Simon interjected, trying to break the awkward silence, perhaps we should... You know what, Trent, I said, my voice carrying just far enough to draw attention from nearby conversations. You're absolutely right about intensity. Real art does require a certain commitment, the willingness to expose yourself completely. Ethan, Julia hissed. I'm just agreeing with the artist, I said innocently. After all, the best work comes from those midnight sessions, doesn't it? When the atmosphere is more... relaxed? Trent's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm simply appreciating the dedication it takes to capture such intimate details. The kind of work that requires very private collaboration. The crowd around us had grown silent, sensing drama. Julia looked mortified. Trent looked furious, and I felt a surge of savage satisfaction. You want a show, Trent? I thought to myself. I'll give you a show. But not here. Not yet. This was just the opening act. I finished my wine and set the glass down with deliberate care. Well, this has been enlightening. Julia, ready to head home? She nodded quickly, eager to escape. Yes, let's go. As we walked toward the exit, I could hear the buzz of conversation resuming behind us. Speculation and gossip spreading through the gallery like wildfire. By tomorrow, half of Millfield would be wondering what exactly had passed between Julia's husband and her star artist. In the parking lot, Julia exploded. What the hell was that about? What was what about? Don't play dumb, Ethan. You were practically accusing Trent of... She stopped, unwilling to voice what we both knew. Of what, Julia? She stared at me for a long moment, her face pale in the streetlight. Nothing. Never mind. The drive home was silent. tension crackling between us like electricity before a storm. Julia stared out the passenger window while I navigated the dark coastal roads, my mind already working on the next phase of my plan. Back at the cottage, Julia went straight to bed without saying goodnight. I sat in my studio, looking at the photos on my phone, and smiled. The game had begun. The next morning, Julia left for work without her usual coffee ritual, grabbing a travel mug and heading for the door like the house was on fire. She paused at the threshold, looking back at me with something that might have been guilt or fear. "About last night," she started. "What about it?" "You seemed upset." I looked up from my newspaper, channeling my best puzzled husband expression. "Upset? I thought it was a lovely evening." Very revealing. She flinched at the word choice. "Ethan, if you have something to say..." "I don't know what you mean, honey. I'm just proud of your success." After she left, I made my first call. "Nate, it's Ethan. You busy?" My best friend Nathan Torres was a retired Portland police detective who'd moved to Millfield the same month we did. He'd taken early retirement after 25 years on the force, claiming he wanted to fish and read mystery novels. In reality, he was bored out of his mind and eager for any distraction. "What's up, Picasso?" "I need a favor, the kind that requires your particular skill set." "This sounds interesting." "Coffee?" We met at Murphy's Diner, a local institution that served coffee strong enough to wake the dead and gossip fresher than the daily catch. Nate listened while I explained the situation, his weathered face growing more amused with each detail. "So your wife's banging the local artist and you want to what? Catch them in the act?" "I already caught them. I want to destroy them." Nate raised an eyebrow. "That's darker than your usual approach to problems." My usual approach involved trusting people. That didn't work out. He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "What do you need?" "Information, background checks, financial records, whatever you can dig up on Trent Morgan without breaking any laws. And if I happen to break a few tiny laws, I didn't hear that." Nate grinned. "This is the most fun I've had since I caught that embezzling city councilman with his pants down." Literally. While Nate worked his contacts, I began my own investigation. Julia had always been careless with paperwork, leaving bank statements and credit card bills scattered around her office. It took me 20 minutes to find what I was looking for. 3 cash withdrawals in the past month, each for $500. Dinner charges at restaurants I'd never been to. A hotel bill from Portland dated 2 weeks ago, the same night Julia claimed she was working late on the gallery's inventory. But the most interesting discovery was a receipt from Tiffany & Company for a man's watch, purchased the day before Trent's gallery opening. I photographed everything. That afternoon, I drove to downtown Millfield and found exactly what I was looking for. Meredith Kowalski, who wrote the Around Town column for the Millfield Gazette. Meredith was 73, sharp as a tack, and knew everyone's business before they did. "Ethan Carter," she said when I approached her table at the Seabird Cafe. "How's the artistic career treating you?" "Can't complain. Mind if I join you?" "Please." She gestured to the empty chair. "I was just thinking about your wife's gallery. That opening last night was quite the event." "So I heard." Lot of talk about that Morgan fellow. Very charismatic." I leaned forward slightly. "Charismatic how?" Meredith's eyes sparkled with the joy of someone about to share premium gossip. "Well, let's just say he's very popular with the ladies, particularly the married ones." "Really?" "Oh yes, there was quite the scandal in Bar Harbor a few years back. Something about a gallery owner's wife and some rather compromising photographs. Nothing proven, of course, but the whispers were loud enough to drive him out of town." "Interesting." "What's more interesting," she continued, "is how quickly he's integrated himself into our little art scene. Very cozy with certain gallery managers, if you know what I mean." I nodded gravely. "That does sound concerning." "Of course, I would never print unsubstantiated rumors," Meredith said with mock seriousness. "But if someone were to provide concrete evidence of impropriety, well, the public has a right to know." "Absolutely. Hypothetically speaking, what kind of evidence would be newsworthy?" "Photographs. Financial irregularities. Witness statements." She sipped her tea. "The kind of evidence that paints a clear picture of someone's character." I left the cafe with a new appreciation for small-town journalism. That evening, Nate called with his findings. "Your boy Trent's got some interesting history," he said. 3 galleries in the past 5 years, always leaving under mysterious circumstances. Never any formal charges, but a pattern of, let's call them inappropriate relationships with female colleagues. What kind of pattern? The kind where married women suddenly discover their artistic sides and start spending a lot of private time in his studio. Usually ends with divorces and damaged reputations. For the women, not for him. What about finances? That's where it gets interesting. He's behind on studio rent, owes money to several suppliers, and there are rumors he's been selling paintings under false pretenses. False pretenses, how? Claiming they're originals when they're actually copies of his earlier work. Different buyers, same painting. Hard to prove unless you can get multiple pieces together for comparison. I smiled. That is interesting. There's more. His car, the fancy Mustang, it's leased, and he's 3 months behind on payments. The repo man's been looking for him. "Nate, you're a beautiful human being." "I know. What's your next move?" "I'm going to give Trent exactly what he deserves. Public humiliation." The next morning, I put my plan into motion. First stop, the Millfield Marina, where I knew Trent liked to park his Mustang when he visited the waterfront galleries. Sure enough, the red convertible sat gleaming in the morning sun, positioned for maximum visibility. I didn't have to wait long. Trent appeared around 10:30, carrying a coffee and looking pleased with himself. He was wearing paint-stained jeans and a white t-shirt that probably cost more than my grocery budget. "Ethan," he said when he saw me. "What brings you to the marina?" "Just enjoying the view," I replied. "Beautiful morning for a drive." "Assuming your car starts." "Why wouldn't it start?" "Oh, no reason. Just heard through the grapevine that some people are having trouble with their payments." Trent's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not. My mistake." I gestured toward his car. "That's a beautiful machine. Must be expensive to maintain." "I do all right." "I'm sure you do. Art's a lucrative business when you find the right patrons." We stared at each other for a moment, the tension thick as fog. Around us, other marina visitors began to notice the confrontation, slowing their pace to eavesdrop. "You know what your problem is, Ethan?" Trent said finally. "I'm sure you're going to tell me. You're jealous of my success, my talent, my connections." He stepped closer. "Some men just can't handle being outclassed." "Outclassed," I repeated. "Is that what you call it?" "I call it reality. Your wife certainly seems to appreciate the difference between a real artist and someone playing with finger paints in his garage." The crowd around us had grown larger, sensing drama. I could see phones coming out, people positioning themselves for a better view. Perfect. "You're right, Trent," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "Julia does seem to appreciate your artistic technique, especially those private midnight sessions." Trent's face went red. "What did you say?" "I said my wife has excellent taste in art, and apparently in artists." I smiled. "Though I have to wonder, do all your models pose for the same painting? Because I've heard you like to recycle your inspiration." "You son of a bitch." Trent swung at me, his fist aimed at my jaw. But 25 years of marriage to Julia had taught me to anticipate sudden attacks. I stepped aside, and Trent's momentum carried him forward, right into the harbor. The splash was magnificent. Trent surfaced sputtering, his expensive t-shirt clinging to his chest, his carefully styled hair plastered to his skull. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. "Oh no," I said loudly. "Your car keys were in your pocket, weren't they?" Trent's expression of horror was worth the price of admission. He dove underwater, frantically searching for his keys, while the crowd watched and filmed. Someone started a slow clap. "Anybody got a fishing net?" I called out. "Looks like we've caught something, but I'm not sure what it is." More laughter. Trent surfaced again, gasping and furious. "You did this on purpose." "Did what? I was just standing here having a conversation about art." "You're the one who decided to take a swim." Harbor security arrived as Trent was hauled out of the water by 2 fishermen. He stood dripping on the dock, shivering with cold and rage, while Officer Martinez took statements. "Any idea how this happened?" Martinez asked me. "Mr. Morgan seemed upset about something," I said. "Started making accusations, took a swing at me, lost his balance. Terrible accident." Trent started to protest, but Martinez cut him off. "Sir, there are 12 witnesses who saw you throw the first punch. You're lucky Mr. Carter isn't pressing charges. I'm not pressing charges, I confirmed. Accidents happen. As Trent was led away to get checked by the paramedics, I heard him shouting about his car keys. The harbor master informed him it would cost $300 for a professional diver to retrieve them. Money he didn't have. By noon, the story was all over Millfield. By evening, the video had been posted to the town's Facebook group with the caption, "Local artist takes unexpected dip." It had 200 likes and 50 comments, most of them mocking. Julia came home that night like a woman attending her own funeral. I heard about what happened at the marina, she said. Terrible thing, I replied. Poor Trent. Hope he didn't catch cold. Ethan, please. We need to talk. About what? About this, whatever this is you're doing. I looked up from my easel where I was working on a new painting, an abstract piece I'd titled Drowning in Lies. I'm not doing anything, Julia. I'm just living my life, painting my pictures, enjoying the community theater. Community theater? That's what small towns are, honey. Theater. Everyone playing their parts, putting on shows for each other. I added a splash of blue to the canvas. Some performances are more convincing than others. She stared at me for a long moment, fear and anger warring in her expression. I don't know what you think you know. I don't think anything, Julia. I know exactly what I know. The words hung between us like a blade. Julia opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. Without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. I smiled and kept painting. Tomorrow I'd escalate things further. After all, the show had just begun. The graffiti appeared on the Coastal Contemporary Gallery's front window Tuesday morning. Infidelity on exhibit, spray-painted in bold red letters. By the time I drove past at 9 a.m., a small crowd had gathered to gawk, while Julia stood on the sidewalk with Mrs. Kelleher, both looking mortified. I parked across the street and watched the show. Julia's phone rang constantly as she supervised the cleanup crew. I could see her gesturing frantically, her professional composure cracking under the weight of public scrutiny. Mrs. Kelleher looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. My phone buzzed with a text from Julia. Where are you? I need you here. I texted back. At the hardware store. Heard about the vandalism. Terrible thing. Be home later. I wasn't at the hardware store. I was at Murphy's Diner, having coffee with Meredith Kowalski and watching her take notes as I provided background context for her next column. Such a shame, I said, stirring my coffee. Julia's worked so hard to build the gallery's reputation. This kind of scandal could really damage the local art scene. Indeed, Meredith agreed. Though one has to wonder what inspired such specific graffiti. Hard to say. Maybe someone's upset about the direction contemporary art is taking. All that abstract expressionism can be very provocative. Or perhaps someone knows something the rest of us don't. I shrugged. Small towns breed rumors. Not all of them are true, of course, but sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, she finished. Speaking of which, I understand you have an alibi for last night. Absolutely. I was home all evening, working on a new painting. Nate Torres stopped by around 8 to borrow some tools. We had a few beers, talked until nearly midnight. All true. Nate had indeed stopped by, and we had talked until midnight, about the best locations to spray paint a message without being caught on security cameras. Not that I would ever engage in such behavior personally. Well, Meredith said, closing her notebook, I'm sure the police will get to the bottom of this. I'm sure they will. The police investigation, led by Officer Martinez, lasted exactly 3 hours. No witnesses, no fingerprints, no security footage from the relevant angle. Just a random act of vandalism that happened to use very specific language. Julia came home that afternoon looking like she'd been through a blender. The gallery's closed for the rest of the week, she announced, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. Mrs. Kelleher thinks it's best to let things cool down. Probably smart, I said. Give people time to forget. Forget? Julia laughed bitterly. Ethan, this is Millfield. People don't forget anything. They'll be talking about this for months. Maybe it'll blow over. It won't blow over. Someone did this deliberately. Someone who wanted to hurt me. I looked up from my newspaper. Any idea who? I have my suspicions. Care to share? She stared at me for a long moment. Where were you last night between 10 and midnight? Here. painting. Nate came by around 8. We had some beers, talked about his fishing trip to Nova Scotia. He left around 11:30. I folded the newspaper carefully. Why? Am I a suspect? I don't know, Ethan. Are you? The accusation hung in the air between us. I could see her trying to read my face, looking for tells, for signs of guilt. What she found instead was the calm expression of a man with nothing to hide. Julia, if you're asking whether I vandalized your gallery, the answer is no. If you're asking whether I'm happy about what happened, the answer is also no. You're my wife. Your success is my success. It was all technically true. I hadn't personally held the spray paint can. That evening, Lily called to check in. Dad, I heard about what happened to Mom's gallery. Is she okay? She's upset, but she'll be fine. These things happen in small towns. What kind of things? Gossip. Drama. People getting bored and stirring up trouble. There was a pause. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. I was on Instagram yesterday, and I saw some pictures from Mom's gallery opening. There were a bunch of photos of her with that artist guy. Trent? My chest tightened. What kind of photos? Just them talking, standing close together. But the comments were weird. People making jokes about how friendly they looked. And then someone posted a video of you pushing him in the harbor. I didn't push him. He fell. I know, Dad. I watched the video. It was actually pretty funny. But, she hesitated. Is there something going on with Mom and that guy? The question I'd been dreading. I could lie, protect her from the ugly truth about her parents' marriage. Or I could trust her with honesty. What do you think, sweetheart? I think Mom's been acting weird for months, and I think you've been pretending not to notice. Smart girl. Too smart for her own good. Lily, adult relationships are complicated. Dad, I'm 16, not 6. I know what an affair looks like. I close my eyes. How long have you known? Since the summer. She started dressing differently, working late all the time, and her phone's always buzzing with texts she won't let anyone see. Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could hear the hurt underneath. I was hoping I was wrong. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Are you guys getting divorced? I don't know. Maybe. Good. The word surprised me. Good? Dad, you've been miserable for years. Even before the stroke. Mom treats you like you're some kind of burden she has to carry around. Lily's voice grew stronger. You deserve better. Thank you for saying that. I mean it. And if that artist jerk thinks he can just waltz in and break up our family without consequences, he's got another thing coming. Lily, I'm on your side, Dad, whatever happens. After we hung up, I sat in my studio staring at my latest painting, a dark seascape with storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The lighthouse in the center stood defiant against the approaching tempest. My phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Phase 2 ready when you are. Phase 2 involved Veronica Walsh and her legendary inability to keep her mouth shut. The Millfield Elementary School PTA meeting was held the third Thursday of every month in the school cafeteria. As a childless couple, Julia and I had no reason to attend, but Veronica Walsh was the current treasurer, and she never missed an opportunity to hold court with the other parents. Nate's ex-wife Sandra was a regular attendee. More importantly, she owed Nate a favor from their amicable divorce settlement. All it took was one phone call and a carefully worded suggestion. Thursday evening, Sandra approached Veronica during the post-meeting social hour. Veronica, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is Julia Carter okay? She seemed so upset at the gallery the other day. Veronica, 3 glasses of wine into the evening, launched into a detailed explanation of Julia's recent troubles. The vandalism, the stress, the pressure from Mrs. Kelleher to maintain the gallery's reputation. It's just so unfair, Veronica slurred. Julia's been working so hard, and now people are making all these nasty insinuations. What kind of insinuations? Sandra asked innocently. Oh, you know, gossip about her and Trent Morgan. Just because they work together closely doesn't mean anything inappropriate is happening. Of course not. I mean, yes, they spend a lot of time together, and yes, she's been to his studio several times for private consultations. And maybe she bought him that expensive watch as a thank you gift for his hard work, but that doesn't mean... Veronica stopped, realizing she'd said too much, but it was too late. Sandra's phone had been recording the entire conversation. By Friday morning, the audio was making rounds through Millfield's gossip network faster than a virus. By afternoon, it had been posted to the town Facebook group with the caption, "Local gallery manager's professional relationship revealed." Julia's phone started ringing at noon and didn't stop. She came home that evening like a woman walking to her own execution. "Someone recorded Veronica at the PTA meeting," she said, without preamble. Recorded her saying what? Things, private things she had no right to share. I looked up from my easel. What kind of private things? It doesn't matter. What matters is that my reputation is being destroyed by gossip and speculation. Is it gossip, Julia? The question hung between us like a loaded gun. Julia's face went through a series of expressions: anger, fear, defiance, and finally, resignation. Ethan. Because if it's just gossip, we can fight it. Issue statements, threaten lawsuits, demand retractions. But if it's not gossip, it's complicated. No, Julia. It's actually very simple. Either you're having an affair with Trent Morgan or you're not. She stared at me for a long moment, her professional mask finally slipping away. Yes, she said quietly, I am. The admission should have hurt more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. The pretending was over. How long? 3 months. Do you love him? I think so. Do you love me? She looked away. I don't know anymore. I nodded and turned back to my painting. Thank you for being honest. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Julia? That I'm shocked? That I'm heartbroken? That I never saw it coming? I added a stroke of gray to the storm clouds. We both know that would be a lie. So what happens now? Now you decide what you want to do, and I decide what I want to do. And what do you want to do? I set down my brush and looked at her directly. I want you to understand that actions have consequences, and I want Trent to understand that destroying other people's lives isn't a game. Ethan, please don't do anything. Anything what, Julia? Anything to embarrass you further? Anything to damage your precious reputation? I smiled, and she took a step back. Sweetheart, I haven't even gotten started. She left the room without another word. An hour later, I heard her car start and drive away. I picked up my phone and texted Nate. Phase 3. Tomorrow. His response was immediate. About damn time. Saturday morning brought news that Trent's studio had been broken into. Nothing stolen, according to the police report, but several paintings had been damaged and his computer files corrupted. The break-in happened sometime between midnight and 3 a.m., when Trent was conveniently visiting Julia at our cottage. I knew this because I'd been watching from my darkroom window when his Mustang pulled into our driveway at 11:30 p.m. I'd also been watching when he left at dawn, looking disheveled and satisfied. The timing was perfect. Terrible thing about Trent's studio, I mentioned to Julia over breakfast. She looked up from her phone, where she'd been texting frantically all morning. What about his studio? Someone broke in last night, damaged some paintings, messed with his computer. Probably kids looking for something to steal. Julia's face went pale. How do you know this? Nate called. He heard it on the police scanner. I buttered my toast calmly. Hope nothing important was damaged. I have to go, Julia said, grabbing her keys. Give Trent my condolences. After she left, I called Nate. How'd it go? Like clockwork, he replied. Got in and out without triggering any alarms. Your boy's security system is a joke. What about the paintings? Splashed some water on a few canvases, nothing permanent. But the computer files. Nate chuckled. Let's just say his backup system wasn't as thorough as he thought. And the evidence? 3 paintings that are identical except for minor variations. Same composition, same brushstrokes, same signature. Different buyers, different sale dates. Your art fraud theory was spot on. Perfect. Phase 4 tonight? Wouldn't miss it. That evening, Julia announced she was attending an emergency meeting with Trent and Mrs. Kelleher to discuss the gallery's future. With everything that's happened, we need to reassess our direction, she said, applying lipstick with shaking hands. Sounds important. It is. The gallery's reputation is at stake. I'm sure you'll figure something out. She paused at the door. Ethan, I know things have been difficult between us lately. Julia, you don't need to explain anything. I understand perfectly. Do you? You're in love with another man. You want out of our marriage. You're trying to figure out how to minimize the damage to your career and social standing. I smiled. It's actually quite logical. She stared at me for a moment, then left without another word. I waited 30 minutes, then drove to the Millfield Community Center. The Autumn Arts Showcase was the town's biggest cultural event, featuring local artists, musicians, and performers. Mrs. Kelleher had organized it as a way to restore confidence in the arts community after the recent scandals. Trent was scheduled to give a presentation about the evolution of coastal art. The community center was packed. I recognized faces from the gallery opening, the marina incident, and various social events. Meredith Kowalski sat in the front row with her notebook ready. Officer Martinez was there with his wife. Even the mayor had shown up. Perfect audience. Trent took the stage at 8 p.m., looking confident despite the recent setbacks. He'd borrowed a suit for the occasion and styled his hair to cover the bruise from his harbor encounter. His presentation began with slides of his paintings, accompanied by passionate commentary about artistic vision and creative integrity. Art is about truth, he declared, clicking to a slide of one of his seascapes. It's about capturing the essence of a moment, the raw emotion of human experience. I waited until he was 15 minutes into his presentation, then stood up. "Excuse me," I called out. "I have a question about artistic integrity." Trent's smile faltered. "Perhaps we could save questions for the end. This won't take long. I'm curious about your creative process, specifically, how you maintain originality when working on multiple pieces." "I'm not sure I understand." I pulled out my phone and activated the projector app Nate had helped me install. "May I?" Before Trent could object, 3 images appeared on the screen behind him. Identical seascapes with minor variations in color and brushwork. Each was signed T. Morgan and dated differently. The audience murmured in confusion. Trent's face went white. "Could you explain how these 3 paintings, sold to different collectors over the past 2 years, represent your commitment to originality?" "Those are studies," Trent stammered. "Variations on a theme. Studies that you sold for $15,000 each?" I stood and walked closer to the stage. "That's interesting, because I spoke to the buyers, and they all believed they were purchasing unique, one-of-a-kind originals." The murmur from the audience grew louder. I could see phones coming out, people recording the confrontation. "Furthermore," I continued, "I'm curious about your collaboration process, particularly with married women who model for your private sessions." "That's enough," Trent said, his voice cracking. "Is it? Because I have documentation of your artistic methodology." I clicked to the next slide, the photos I'd taken outside Trent's studio, showing him and Julia in a passionate embrace. "This is from last Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. Very dedicated to your craft. Working so late." The audience erupted. Gasps, whispers, a few nervous laughs. Mrs. Kelleher looked like she might faint. In the back, I saw Julia slip through the door, her face mortified. "You son of a bitch," Trent snarled, jumping down from the stage. Now, I said calmly. "Let's keep this professional. We're discussing art, after all." Trent lunged at me, but this time I was ready. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him into the front row of chairs. He crashed into Mrs. Patterson from the library, sending her purse flying and scattering programs everywhere. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Someone shouted, "Do it again!" Officer Martinez stepped forward to restore order, but the damage was done. Trent lay tangled in folding chairs, his borrowed suit torn and his dignity in ruins. The photos were still projected on the screen behind him, and half the audience was filming with their phones. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced to the crowd, "I present to you the evolution of coastal art, from fraud to farce in under 20 minutes. More laughter. Even Martinez was trying not to smile. As Trent was helped to his feet, I leaned close and whispered, "Next time you want to destroy someone's life, make sure they don't have better friends than you do." The showcase ended early, with most of the audience heading to Murphy's Diner to dissect what they'd witnessed. By morning, the story would be all over Maine. By afternoon, it would be on social media with hashtags like #ArtistDown and Millfield Meltdown. I drove home to find Julia waiting in the driveway, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "How could you?" she screamed as I got out of my car. "How could you humiliate me like that?" "I didn't humiliate you, Julia. You Humiliated yourself. Those photos were private. Nothing's private when you're conducting your affair in public spaces. Did you think no one would notice? She slapped me, hard enough to sting. I didn't flinch. Feel better? I asked. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my relationship. Your relationship with your lover, you mean? Yes. I love him. Then you should be happy. Now you can be together without sneaking around. Julia stared at me, confusion replacing anger. What are you talking about? I'm talking about consequences, Julia. You wanted out of our marriage. You wanted to be with Trent. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. But my job. Mrs. Kelleher fired you an hour ago. Trent, too. Apparently art fraud and public adultery aren't good for the gallery's image. Julia's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. What am I supposed to do now? I don't know, Julia. That's your decision to make. I have nowhere to go. No income. No, you have Trent. Trent's broke. His studio lease is up. He can't make his car payments. And after tonight, she laughed bitterly. Who's going to buy art from someone exposed as a fraud? I sat down beside her on the steps. You should have thought of that before you decided to blow up our marriage. I never meant for it to go this far. What did you mean, Julia? She was quiet for a long moment. I meant to leave you eventually. After I figured out the finances, after Lily graduated, after I had everything arranged properly. You meant to manage me. Like a business transaction. It wasn't personal. It was completely personal. You were planning to discard me when it became convenient. Julia looked at me with something like surprise. When did you become so cold? About the same time you decided I wasn't worth your loyalty. We sat in silence as the sun set over the Maine coast. Finally, Julia spoke. What happens now? Now you pack your things and leave. Tonight. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. She started to cry again, but I felt no sympathy. The woman sitting beside me had betrayed our marriage, planned to discard me at her convenience, and shown no remorse until she faced consequences. Ethan, please. Julia, it's over. We both know it. The whole town knows it, and pretending otherwise won't change anything. But I have rights. You have the right to leave with your dignity intact, which is more than you deserve after tonight's performance. She looked at me with something like fear. What about the divorce? The house? The money? My lawyer will be in touch. Your lawyer? I smiled. Did you think I'd go through this without legal representation? I've been documenting everything for months, Julia. The affair, the financial irregularities, the lies, the planning to abandon our marriage. When we go to court, I'll have evidence of everything. You've been planning this? I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Julia stared at me for a long moment, then stood up slowly. I never knew you could be so ruthless. You never gave me a reason to be. She went inside to pack. An hour later, she loaded 2 suitcases into her car and drove away without saying goodbye. I sat on the porch until midnight, watching the stars reflect on the water and thinking about second chances. Tomorrow, I'd call Lily and explain what happened. Next week, I'd start divorce proceedings. Next month, I'd begin rebuilding my life. But tonight, I was content to sit in the silence and appreciate the sound of my own thoughts, without the background noise of betrayal and lies. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. 3 days later, Trent showed up at my cottage. It was nearly midnight, and I was in my studio working on a new painting, a sunrise over calm waters, symbolizing new beginnings. The knock on my door was aggressive, desperate. I opened it to find Trent swaying on my porch, clearly drunk and looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and his eyes had the wild look of a man watching his life collapse in real time. You destroyed everything, he slurred. Hello, Trent. Lovely evening for a visit. Don't be cute with me, you bastard. You planned this whole thing. Planned what? Your decision to commit art fraud? Your decision to seduce my wife? Your decision to humiliate yourself in public? I leaned against the doorframe. I'm flattered that you think I have that much control over your choices. You set me up. The break-in, the photos, the community center. The break-in was random vandalism. The photos were taken in public. And the community center presentation was your idea. Bullshit. Trent, you're drunk and you're trespassing. I suggest you go home and sleep it off. I don't have a home anymore. Got evicted yesterday. Can't make rent without the gallery income. That's unfortunate. Julia won't even talk to me. Says I ruined her life. Imagine that. Trent's face contorted with rage. You think you're so clever, don't you? Sitting in your little cottage, playing the victim while you destroy people's lives. I didn't destroy anything, Trent. I just stopped pretending not to see what was already there. You want to know the truth? He stepped closer, his breath reeking of whiskey. Julia never loved you. She told me all about your pathetic marriage, how bored she was, how desperate she was to escape. I'm sure she did. She said you were weak, a failure, that the stroke was just an excuse to give up on life. The words were designed to hurt, but they bounced off me like rain off glass. Is that all? She laughed about your painting, called it therapeutic finger painting for the emotionally damaged. Anything else? Trent's confusion was visible. Don't you care? Doesn't it hurt to know what she really thought of you? Trent, I've known what Julia thought of me for years. The difference is, now I don't care. You're lying. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, you're the one who's lost everything. Your studio, your income, your reputation, your girlfriend. I'm still here, in my house, with my art, living my life exactly as I choose. She'll come back to me. Will she? Because last I heard, Julia was staying at her sister's place in Boston, telling everyone who will listen that you seduced her and ruined her career. Trent's face went white. That's not true. Isn't it? Check Facebook sometime. She's been quite vocal about being manipulated by an unscrupulous artist who took advantage of her professional obligations. It was true. Julia had spent the past 3 days crafting a narrative that painted her as the victim and Trent as the predator. She was trying to salvage what remained of her reputation by throwing him under the bus. She wouldn't. She would. She did. She's protecting herself, Trent, just like she always does. And you're the collateral damage. Trent staggered backward, the fight going out of him. This is all your fault. No, this is all your fault. You chose to pursue a married woman. You chose to commit fraud. You chose to destroy other people's lives for your own gratification. I stepped forward. I just chose to stop being a victim. I'll make you pay for this. How? You're broke, homeless, and unemployable. Your art career is over, your personal life is in ruins, and the only woman who ever showed interest in you has publicly declared you a predator. Trent's hands clenched into fists. You'll what? Hit me? Go ahead. Give me a reason to call the police and have you arrested for assault. Add a criminal record to your list of accomplishments. He stood there for a long moment, swaying with alcohol and rage, before the reality of his situation finally penetrated his drunken brain. There was nothing he could do to me that wouldn't make his situation worse. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. It's been over since the moment you decided to mess with my family. Trent turned and stumbled toward his car, or what used to be his car. The red Mustang now sported a bright yellow repo notice on the windshield. Looks like your ride's been recalled, I called after him. He flipped me off and started walking down the dark road toward town. I went back inside and called Nate. Trent just paid me a visit, I said. Drunk and belligerent? Naturally. How'd you know? Because I've been watching him for the past hour. He's been sitting in Murphy's parking lot, working up the courage to come see you. Still watching him? Yep. He's about halfway to town, walking like a man with nowhere to go. Perfect. Phase 5? Already in motion. Check your email. I opened my laptop and found a message from an anonymous account with the subject line, Millfield's newest viral star. The attachment was a video compilation set to circus music. Trent falling into the harbor, Trent crashing into the chairs at the community center, Trent stumbling drunk through downtown Millfield, and finally, security footage of Trent being escorted out of his studio by his landlord. The video had been posted to YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok simultaneously. In the 3 hours since going live, it had accumulated over 50,000 views and hundreds of comments, most of them mocking. My favorite comment? This guy makes performance art out of his own life failures. Nate, you're an artist. I learned from the best. How are you feeling? Satisfied. Complete. Ready to move on with my life. Good, because I have news about Julia. I'm listening. She's been in touch with a divorce lawyer in Boston. Aggressive type who specializes in protecting women from abusive husbands. I laughed. Abusive? I never laid a hand on her. Emotional abuse, apparently. She's claiming you manipulated and psychologically tormented her. Interesting strategy. Won't work. I've got recordings of her admitting to the affair, documentation of her financial deceptions, and witness statements about her behavior. Plus, the whole town saw what really happened. What about Trent? Trent's leaving town tomorrow. His sister in Oregon is sending him bus fare. Apparently, this isn't the first time he's had to start over after a scandal. Good riddance. There's more. Mrs. Kelleher is closing the gallery permanently. Says the art scene in Millfield has become too toxic and unprofessional. That's unfortunate for the legitimate artists. Maybe. Or maybe it's an opportunity for someone with actual integrity to start something new. I looked around my studio at the dozen paintings I'd completed since moving to Millfield. They weren't masterpieces, but they were honest. They were mine. Nate, what do you know about opening an art gallery? Nothing. But I know about business, security, and keeping troublemakers out. Why? Just thinking. This town could use a fresh start. We hung up and I went back to my painting. Outside, the Maine coast stretched endlessly under a star-filled sky, beautiful and indifferent to human drama. Tomorrow, I'd start planning my future. Tonight, I was content to capture the moment when everything changed. The next morning brought a call from Lily. Dad, I saw the video. The one of Trent being an idiot. Which one? There are several now. All of them. Dad, you're kind of famous. The story's been picked up by art blogs and gossip sites. They're calling it the Millfield Meltdown. Wonderful. Are you okay with all this attention? I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you handling everything? Honestly, I'm proud of you. Proud? Dad, for as long as I can remember, people have walked all over you. Mom, her friends, your old boss, everyone. You just took it and smiled and tried to keep the peace. That's what married people do. They compromise. No, Dad. That's what doormats do. What you did to Trent and Mom, that wasn't compromise. That was justice. Some people might say it was revenge. So what? They deserved it. And more importantly, you deserved better. After we hung up, I sat on my porch with my coffee and thought about justice versus revenge. Maybe there wasn't a difference. Maybe sometimes the universe needed a little help balancing the scales. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Carter, this is Rebecca Morrison from Maine Arts Monthly. We'd like to do a feature story about your experience. Would you be available for an interview? Then another. Ethan, this is David Chen from the Portland Press Herald. We're covering the Millfield art scandal and would love to get your perspective. And another. Mr. Carter, I represent several galleries in Boston who are interested in your work. Could we schedule a meeting? I turned off my phone and went back to my painting. Fame was just another kind of noise, and I'd had enough noise for one lifetime. 2 weeks later, Julia's divorce papers arrived via certified mail. She was asking for half of everything, including the cottage and my retirement accounts. She was also requesting alimony and claiming emotional distress. I called my lawyer. How strong is her case? I asked. Weak, he replied. Adultery is still grounds for fault-based divorce in Maine, and we have overwhelming evidence. Plus, her public statements about being, quote, manipulated are contradicted by the recordings of her admitting to the affair. What about her claims of emotional abuse? She'll have to prove it. And given that half the town witnessed her lover's public meltdowns and her own admission of guilt, that's going to be difficult. How long until this is over? 6 months, maybe less if she comes to her senses and accepts a reasonable settlement. What's reasonable? She gets her personal belongings, her car, and enough money to start over. You keep the house, your retirement accounts, and your dignity. Sounds fair to me. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Julia got exactly what my lawyer had predicted: her belongings, her car, and a modest settlement. She also got a reputation that would follow her wherever she went, thanks to the internet's long memory and the viral videos that would never truly disappear. I got my life back. Trent, according to various social media reports, was working as a house painter in Portland, Oregon. He had tried to restart his art career under a different name, but someone had recognized him from the videos and exposed his identity. His sister had kicked him out after he'd tried to seduce her neighbor's wife. Some patterns never change. As for me, I opened the Millfield Community Arts Center in the space formerly occupied by the Coastal Contemporary Gallery. It featured work by local artists who actually created original pieces, along with classes for people who wanted to learn without the pretension. My own paintings hung in a small corner gallery, priced reasonably and labeled honestly. Therapeutic art by a reformed architect. They sold surprisingly well. On the 1-year anniversary of my stroke, I stood on my porch watching the sunrise paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The cottage looked exactly as it had when we'd first moved in, except now it felt like home instead of a prison. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Lily's number. "Happy anniversary, Dad." "Anniversary?" 1 year since your stroke. 1 year since you started your new life. Has it been a year already? Yep. And what a year it's been. How are you feeling? I looked out at the water, at the town that had become my home, at the art center where people came to create instead of destroy. I feel like myself again, I said. Good. That's exactly how you should feel. After we hung up, I went to my studio and started a new painting. This one showed a lighthouse standing tall after a storm, its beacon shining clearly across calm waters. In the distance, dark clouds were retreating toward the horizon, and the first rays of dawn were breaking through. I titled it, After the Storm. It was the truest thing I'd ever painted, 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 thing